There was a time not all that long ago that I had a really good handle on my stash. In fact, I'd gotten it all the way down to just one skein. It took me a whole year to do that. And I spent the next 6 months working on mini skeins and scraps, and I was in a really good place. But then we spent 2 years traveling around the US and Canada, and I did my fair share of collecting and experiencing new yarns. And I don't feel bad about that in most senses, but the amount of stash that I have is starting to weigh on me, and this is not it. Oh no. Oh no. This entire closet is filled with tubs and tubs of yarn. So my goal this year is just to use more stash, and I figured what a better way to start that goal than to inventory my entire stash. I've made a spreadsheet. I'm gonna go through everything today, track it all down, and then I can keep track throughout the year, maybe once a month or maybe once a quarter, and see exactly how much yardage I'm using, how many grams I'm using, to help motivate myself along the way. I don't expect this to take 1 year to work through everything again. In fact, I don't even think, at least right now, that I want to get back to that single skein or no stash again. Really, all I want to do is just appreciate my stash, use what I have, love on it, enjoy it, and make sure it's something that I go to first before shopping online or heading to a store. So let's inventory today. I'm a little bit nervous at how long this is going to take me, but we can do it together. I'm gonna start with what I'm considering the easiest part of my stash, which is what's displayed here. This is most of the single skeins of yarn that I have. In the closet, I have a variety of things, and we're gonna pull them all out today. I have sweaters quantities, I have yarns that go together in more of a collection, I have mini skein advents, I also have an entire massive bag of leftovers from a huge blanket project that I did when we were visiting all 50 states. And I do want to include leftovers in this stash inventory today because it is stash. Last time when I did a stash down, I felt like I just had so much that I focused on one thing at a time. So I went through an entire year of just focusing on intact skeins of yarn, whether they were single skeins, like they didn't have a match or a pair, or sweaters quantities, and I just worked on those. And then I moved on to mini skeins and leftovers, and that was a really good process. I really did enjoy that. But this time I just want to inventory everything, and then I'm gonna make a plan as we go. It is January right now as I'm filming this, so I have a lot of New Year energy, but I'm not quite ready to make a plan of attack yet. Usually that happens for me in February. I'm still working on finishing up whips from last year right now. That's what's motivating me, but I wanted to start this inventory just so I had everything in my head. And honestly, I feel like I'm probably trying to guilt myself into starting some new projects with stash. Okay, so let's get this guy out of the way here. So I am hoping at the end of the day today that I have a total number of skeins, a total number of yards, and a total number of grams for my stash. It may take me more than 1 day, but hopefully I can get it done today. We'll see. So I'm gonna take some of these and, oh my goodness. Well, actually, hold on. Let's use our brain here. I've got a basket. I'm gonna take these over to my computer. Or should I bring my computer over here? I think I'm gonna take these over to my computer for now. And we are just gonna start with these guys. And I wanna show you the way that I have my spreadsheet set up. All right, so I have created a spreadsheet using Google Sheets, and if it works well today, I am planning to create a blank copy that I will link down below that you are welcome to make a copy of yourself, and then you'll have your own version that you can, play with, add or delete columns, and do with what you wish. But I'm going to take you through a tour of what the spreadsheet looks like, and then we're going to start inventorying some yarn. So I'm going to record my screen, fingers crossed that it works. As you can see, I already have a couple of skeins in here that I was kind of practicing with earlier as I was trying to decide exactly what I wanted to track. So I know you can do this in Ravelry and probably a number of other places. The reason I decided to do it in a spreadsheet on my own is because then I have full control over how I want to configure things. I also wanted to set it up to calculate for me the total yardage, the total grams. I'm planning to kind of see how much I am able to lose or use or donate throughout the year. And I figured this would be the easiest way to do it. So here are the things that I am tracking. So first I'm tracking the weight of the yarn, and I made myself a little drop-down menu and color-coded it because I love color coding. I love making spreadsheets. It's so fun. So I've got lace through like chunky and bulky. And then I figured I'd want to track a few things about the yarn itself. So I've got a column for the dyer, for the color name, and then something I do like that Ravelry has is you can choose the closest color. I thought that might be a fun rainbow to see in my spreadsheet. So I made another little drop-down menu where I can choose the closest color. So I've got red through pink, and then I've got light or dark neutral. Then I've got a spot for yardage, the number of skeins, and then the total yardage column is a formula that's going to calculate for me when I get to those sweater quantities, and it will tell me how much total yardage I have. Same with the grams, so grams per skein, and then it will calculate the total number of grams. These last two columns are also drop-down menus, so I figured it might be interesting to see how many single skeins I have versus stuff that's grouped for other projects. So I don't have a lot on here right now. I just have single, garment, or other. I don't really make a whole lot of things, at least right now, that aren't single skein projects, blankets, or garments. So maybe I should do a blanket one, or you know what I might need to do is like mini skeins, like Advent or something like that. That might be a helpful one for me to have. And then the final column is the status of it. So most of these today, well, pretty much all of them until I add in my whips. Do I count my whips? What do you think? My current whips, they will still be yarn out of stash, right? I don't know yet. I have to think about that. But essentially, I want to track how I am using up these yarns. So they are all unused right now, which is why it's red, because it's like, red, you need to use this up. Whip is orange, so that would mean it's in progress. Yellow is leftover, so even if I don't use up everything in a project, I will still keep it in here as a leftover, I think. I don't know yet. And then green would be finished. So I completed a project and used up all that yarn. And then purple is donated. I do know from going through my stash in the past that not everything has to be used by me. Sometimes I get to a yarn and I'm like, you know what? I think that this is either not my color, not my style. I'm not really feeling inspired by it anymore. And I'm able to donate that to somebody who does want to use it, who can enjoy it more than it just sitting on my shelf. There could totally be things that I add throughout the year as I am working on things. Like I really debated if I wanted fiber content on here, but I ultimately decided against it because I'm going to be inventorying a lot today, and most of my yarn is going to be some kind of blend of wool, mostly merino, and like a nylon. So I just decided I'm not going to track that. If I do want to track it as I'm using up the yarn, I think that's probably a smarter way to do it rather than taking the time to do it today. So I'm still leaving it open that I can add that back in there, add another point, just not while I'm inventorying the entire mass of my stash today. So I am going to go ahead and get started on inventorying these skeins. I think I can get through all of these pretty quickly. So let's get to it. I think that took about 30 minutes, although I didn't time myself, so I'm not 100% sure. But I already have a little bit of a headache from like looking down, looking up to the screen. So I'm definitely going to do this in chunks throughout the day and maybe even into the rest of this week. Look though how cool my spreadsheet is looking, all the fun colors, all of the yarn. There was one thing that was missing from my spreadsheet, and that was something to calculate the totals. So I've added that now into the top, and I can tell you just from my single skeins, just from that one shelf, I have 38 total skeins, 13,826 yards in those skeins, 3,713 grams. Okay, I'm gonna put these back, and then we need to dive into the closet and at least get started on something in there. This is gonna take a long time, isn't it, Toaster? I'm trying to figure out where to start exactly, because most of my yarn's actually on this side, but I kind of have to empty this side of the closet first before I can get to anything. The other thing I am just now realizing in this moment that I have forgotten about is fiber. So I need to make a category. It's okay, buddy. I need to make a category for that in my tracker as well, because I think that will be something important to track. It is stash. It is something that I am currently using. So mental note to add that in. We definitely have some organizing, me. I have some organizing to do in here. The ultimate goal is to get this closet mostly emptied of yarn so that we can actually use it for other things that we have in our house. And this office space and yarn room is also where we will host guests, and we're hoping to have lots of friends come and visit us this summer. So I really need to get to work on this. I think what I'm gonna do as I'm pulling things out here is just start making massive piles on the floor. So mini skeins and advents is gonna be one of those piles. Pardon the noise. Stuff like this, leftovers, is also gonna be one of these piles. This is something that I have already worked with and used, so I am looking for somebody to send it to. I hopefully have somebody already that wants this yarn, because this was the advent yarn from this past year from Woolens and Nosh. I made a beautiful pair of socks, but I've already made a pair of socks, so I'm hoping to share that with somebody else. I need to find a spot for my Swift. This top tub is not yarn, so I'm gonna go ahead. Oh. Okay, I think everything's done falling. I'm gonna put it outside of this room for now, just, out of sight, out of mind. This is some yarn for current whips. So again, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to include that in my stash, like de-stashing for the year, or if these projects, since they've already started, are not stash. I think I'm gonna track them either way. They may not contribute to my total for the year of getting stash gone, but I think it will still be fun to track them. So I'll make a pile for these. This second bin, what does it say? Kitchen storage. It's not that anymore. It's actually all of my lingering whips. So this will also go with the whip pile. I'm pretty sure this entire box down here is just project bags. I'm gonna pull it out for now because I'm probably not gonna film this, but I am gonna do a little bit of like reorganization in here today. Might as well, since I'm pulling everything out and inventorying all my yarn. So I will double check that there are no other yarns in here. But yeah, it's a lot of project bags. Something else I do want to work on, like whittling down and de-stashing this year, but just not yet. One thing at a time. There actually was some yarn in there, but it is yarn I've already designated to use for prizes, mostly in the Love and Stitches membership, but also if I do other like giveaways and stuff this year. So I'm not going to inventory this into stash. It is a separate thing, but I am going to put it by my desk because one of my tasks this week is to plan out some prizes. That will also hopefully give me some room in that tub. Maybe I can get all my project bags in there later. Now we have finally made it into the part of the closet that I was trying to get to, which is all of my yarn. There are 2 big bags, potentially 2 tubs of yarn. I'm actually not sure. And that is another goal of this inventory today, is to get the bigger picture of what I have. In the past, all of my yarn has been out on display, and with the volume that I have right now and the space that we have, that is just not possible. Plus, I really don't think I want to see all of my yarn out on display. I think it would really just overwhelm me and not inspire me. As I was going through all of those single skeins, I was feeling really inspired. I'm like, oh yeah, I really want to work with this. Oh, I remember, like I bought this because I wanted to make Kent, my husband, a pair of socks. So that was really motivating. So having just a small selection on display is a strategy that I'm trying this year to keep things fresh and not overwhelming. I also figured I can kind of change it out throughout the year depending on what my goal is for projects for that month. But again, it has to start with me seeing the full picture. So having my spreadsheet that I can refer to and look at and see all of my yarns at a glance is going to be really helpful so that I don't have to do this whole closet shuffle every single time I want to see my yarn. All right, let's get this guy out. We might just do these one at a time. All right, time to kick the slippers off because I think we're going to sit down on the floor for a lot of this. Okay, so this ginormous bag, I'm pretty sure is a lot of sweaters quantities and a lot of advents. So I'm going to open it up and again, just keep sorting it out on the floor. I think once I make piles of everything, then I will stop and make a plan of like inventory the sweaters quantities, take a 15-minute break, inventory the advents, take a 15-minute break. That way my headache doesn't come back because it's already gone away now that I'm not looking at the computer, which is great. Already now I'm seeing another interesting dilemma on how to track something in my stash. I have 4 skeins of hand spun yarn. These were spun last year. They're completely finished. They're ready to be knitted. So these are just going to go into stash as yarn. But then I'm thinking about my fiber, and the fiber really gets worked twice. It gets spun, and that's one use of it. And then it gets used again as yarn in a knit or crochet project. So I'm trying to think how to track that. I feel like the fiber that's fiber still is only going to get tracked once. It will be finished when it is a completed project, not yarn. But this particular one, since it is already yarn, is going to get counted in the project. That makes sense actually, because then all the fiber is basically just getting counted once and it gets finished when it's used in knitting or crochet. Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense. That feels good for me. I know that it's tracked different ways, especially in like make-alongs because it is more work. But for me and the purposes of what I'm doing, I'm just trying to get grams of fiber out of my stash. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm so sorry, Toaster. I know you hate this so much. Are you okay? Oh, buddy. The biggest and wrinkliest and scariest parts are gone. Not wrinkly, crinkly, because that bag is empty. And we've got some categories here. So this is mini skeins from Ruby and Roses for one particular project. Really, it should go over here with all of my Advent mini skein sets. These are whips, and then these are sweaters quantities. I also found another bag of single skeins that's labeled holidays. I do remember putting these aside. Those skeins are like Christmas colors, wintry colors, Halloween colors. I think I may even have a Valentine's Day one in there. So I did keep those separate and not displayed. I might integrate them into my yarn shelf though, just to, again, create more space in here and have it be something I can reach for more easily. And maybe I'll put something special on my spreadsheet to like tag it as holiday so that when I go to select something, let's say this next December, I want to make a pair of Christmas socks, I will know exactly what I have in my collection. I think I need to keep seeing what else is in the closet before I stop and add everything to my spreadsheet again. So there's another big bag. Okay, this guy, let me set it down. Whew, that's heavy. That bag I know for sure is all leftovers from a blanket that I made. And we'll try to put a picture in here. I made this gorgeous blanket as we were traveling around the US. I collected well over 200 yarns to make this blanket, and I did not use the full skein. So in here, I have no idea how many 80-gram skeins that I have. And I'm planning to do another project with them at some point, which is why I'm keeping them contained all together and they haven't been like integrated into stash or separated or anything like that. So I'm probably going to save this for last. I don't know if I'm going to get this today, but I hope that I am able to get to it and inventory it well before this video comes out so I can at least give you some numbers on it. But just seeing how long the single skeins took, I have a feeling like I'm gonna have to go through each of these and weigh them. And also all the labels are wrapped around these in a way that I can't just easily glance at them. So it's definitely going to take some time. So I'm not gonna stress about doing this one today, but it is part of my total inventory. I do think I have a little more yarn in here, so let's pull out these last few tubs, see what's in there. Hopefully it's not too much, but I am seeing that my fiber is not out here, which means it's in there somewhere. This one is pretty heavy. At least it says knitting. Okay. Oh, yes. This one is full of yarn and fiber. I think that this box actually contains a lot of leftovers and potentially my fiber. I am seeing the partner to this one, so I'm gonna put that over there. I'm hoping to start spinning on that yarn this month. I'm also seeing a couple bags that I can sort out with my bags, which is really nice. And then I am seeing leftovers of things. And this is my biggest like sore point in my stash. What I would love to do is moving forward when I finish a project to go ahead and deal with those leftovers. So whether I start a second project like a hat or socks to use them up, whether I intentionally set them aside for a scrappy blanket or something like that, or I send them to somebody else to be used for their own projects. I want to do that one project at a time as I'm finishing them moving forward. But for all of these, I just have like random leftovers. Actually, this is a project that I started and never actually finished. So these are actually all full skeins and it's a sweaters quantity. So I will toss that over there. This I kind of held on to because I figured a solid yarn like this is actually pretty useful. I first used it as a border on a border for a blanket. Then I used the leftovers to make a tank top and I still have about a skein and a half left. So it really could be used for a lot. So that one is pretty handy to add into my stash inventory because I could use it for something. These though, I don't really see myself going back and using those because it's kind of a unique base. I finished a t-shirt out of that yarn, absolutely loved working with it, and I really don't need that yarn for anything else. I was debating going back and lengthening that shirt because I do find it to be a little short, which is why I think I'm holding on to it. So this whole box to me really feels like unfinished business, and I really need to start attacking these things one at a time. So I will inventory them into my stash, but I think that a lot of this is going to be donated eventually, hopefully. So I'm gonna make a leftovers pile, sort out anything else that's in here. Hopefully we get to the fiber in the bottom. And I have uncovered my spinning wheel, which I definitely need to bring out as I am planning to start spinning again later this month. I just checked that last big tub and thankfully it is not yarn, which means we now have everything out to inventory. I was able to get things a little more tidied up. I got all of the project bags into one of those giant plastic bags and I put all the empty tubs into the closet so I could shut that door and just have everything laid out here that I need to inventory. So now I just need to go pile by pile by pile and inventory the rest of this. So I do anticipate this taking me the rest of the day. So I think it's a good time for me to take a break. I will check in with you later. Maybe at the end of each category, I'll give you an update of where I'm at in my total stash. So my strategy eventually turned into gathering up one category at a time and taking it into the living room where I had a TV that I could watch something while using my computer to do the inventory. Okay, I just finished up the mini skeins and my total number of skeins, as expected, has skyrocketed because each of those little individual ones are counting as a skein. So I think I'm going to go back later and I'm going to be able to sort this by minis and singles and multis. And that will actually tell me how many 100 gram skeins I have, which I think is a more helpful number than seeing all those minis. But if we do count them all as skeins, we do have now 333 skeins in total, 33,513 yards, 8,212 grams. I think I'm going to do my fiber next because it's my smallest category and I can do that fairly quickly. And then I'm moving on to sweater quantities. The fiber was super quick because, as I said, I don't have a ton of it, but I did find a slight flaw here in my spreadsheet, and that is yardage. I don't really have a way to track the yardage of my fiber because I don't know what weight yarn is going to end up being yet. So I've left that blank for now. So it's not going to be a perfect system because I don't have the yardage track for these, but I was able to weigh them and convert ounces to grams so that I can still measure it in grams. So now we're at a total of 348 skeins. Just the individual put-ups that these fibers came in is what I considered a skein. So it's not equivalent to like a 100 gram skein of yarn, but that's totally fine. And now I'm at a total of 9,209 grams. And just for fiber, it's looking like I have, let me do some math here. I have 15 different bundles of fiber, although 8 of them are just this one color. So that is a lot for somebody who hasn't done any spinning since early last year. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and take what I've already inventoried and get that big tub back out of the closet, put it into there because there is nothing except for this that I am going to be working with in the near future so that that can be put away. This room can be semi-cleared. And then the only 2 categories we have left I think are going to be my most time consuming, but it's the sweaters and it's the leftovers. The leftovers are going to take a while because I'm going to need to weigh things and kind of reconsider. I'm even thinking about if something is 100 grams, potentially rescanning it or recaking it or just in some way making it more desirable to be used instead of the mess of Ziploc bags that it's in right now. I'm gonna fix this, don't worry. I'm gonna make it nice. I've just finished up all of my sweaters quantities and we have some new totals. So I'm at 398 skeins, 47,671 yards, and 13,575 grams. The funniest thing to me here is looking at the garment section now, which actually, let me count these up. So if all of these skeins that I have enough yarn to make garments actually turn into garments, I will have 13 potential sweaters. That's a lot of sweaters. There's no way I'm getting through that this year, but it's nice to know that I have some options to choose from. But what was funny to me and what really stood out is the color palette. So as I was going through my single skeins, I had a little bit more range. It was looking pretty rainbowy. When I look at this one, it is light neutrals, dark neutrals, and pink with one purple in there. I think I have hit my max today, but I got a ton done. I just need to do the leftovers. Well, I've saved all the hardest parts for later, but I'm gonna work on those throughout the week. I'll come back at the end with a grand total. It is a fresh new day, kind of. Admittedly, it is 6 days later, and as you can see behind me, I still have not made a ton of progress. I feel like this is just more of a weekend task. I started this last Sunday, now it is Saturday afternoon, but I am motivated and ready to keep going. I have made myself some tea, and it's time to tackle the leftovers category. So where I last left you, I had finished up, most of my intact skeins. I did actually add in a few more. I had those holiday skeins. So I've added them into my tracker. I've also put them on my yarn shelf, so it has gotten noticeably fuller. Our new totals are now 398 skeins, 47,671 yards, and 13,575 grams. So I've been putting off doing the leftovers portion because I feel like it's going to be the hardest one to do. And I kept thinking like maybe I should just do some on my own before bringing it in front of the camera and kind of showing my process. And then that led me to just keep putting it off and putting it off. So now we're just going to tackle it together. But I have pulled a few things aside that I feel like are going to be some decent examples. And I just kind of thought if I'm struggling this much to figure out where leftovers fit in my stash and my stash tracking, I am probably not alone. And maybe even just sharing my not perfect way of doing it will inspire some conversation. We can talk with each other about how you go about things, and maybe we can find a way together. So first thing is I have recently finished a blanket project. So I'll put a picture in here. It is the Blanket from Heart to Heart by Yarn Sonata. I have sent it off. It is a gift. And this is what I have left over from this project. So this looks like a nearly full skein, but actually I have used some of this plus a little bit of leftovers here. So these two are the same yarn. So where does this go into my stash? What does it qualify as? Is it a full skein? Because I might have 100 grams here. Let's see, is this 100 grams? Yeah, so this is a 100-gram ball. Actually, I have brought out my scale. So let's weigh it and see how much it is. That's gonna be one of the things I track regardless. So yeah, both of these together is 111 grams. So technically I have a full skein. This one's 88, which makes this one what? 23, so 111 grams altogether. So where does that go in my stash? Does it go in as a full skein? Does it go in as leftovers? And that's ultimately up for me to decide. So I think the way I want to process most things like this is that they are leftovers. It's from a project that I have already completed, and finishing or creating another thing is my goal. I can't remember if I've shared this in this video yet, but I do want to kind of get ahead of my problem of having leftovers by making a plan for what's left of a project when I finish it. So I just finished this one this week, and since it was a gift for my brother and his wife and their daughter, I thought, wouldn't it be fun to make something else? I actually got this idea from all of you, so thank you so much. So maybe I should make something else for their daughter with this yarn. I'm not ready to do it yet, but wouldn't it be kind of cute if maybe on her first birthday next winter, I had something for her out of the same yarn that matched her blanket? I think that it would just be special. This also isn't the type of yarn that falls into like the scrappy category in my stash, like a fingering weight yarn would. So I think that's a good solution for this. So when I track this into my stash, I think I'm only going to track yardage and grams and not count it as a skein, or I'll just count it as one skein. I mean, this one makes sense because it's pretty much one skein anyway, but there's some other examples that I'm going to show that are a little more complicated. And so I think that's how I'm going to track it. I also want to make a way to kind of note for myself that I have a project idea for this leftover. So I might even start like another tab that says leftovers and like project ideas or something like that. So that way, when I put this away, I will know what I'm going to do with it in the future. So that's my thought for this sort of leftover, something that I have a plan for. Ideally, I would start that right away and just like get it done and get it completed and get it to an even smaller scrap. But if I'm making something for her first birthday, I'm thinking maybe like a cute little sweater or something. Maybe I'll need more yarn for that. But 1-year-olds are pretty tiny, so maybe it will be something different. But anyway, I want to wait and see how big she is then, closer to then, because right now she's a newborn and we have no way of telling what size she'll actually be in a year from now. Okay, so the other type of leftover here is this one. So I have another project that I am pretty much finished with. Isn't this cute? It's a Tier Buddy. It's Ellie the elephant. All I have to do is add some stuffing in here, finish sewing this up, and this will be totally done. And I have this left over from this project. This is Sugar and Cream Cotton. Let's see. This is not actually the right label for it. It's a different color, but this is the same yarn. Now, the reason this one is different than the previous one I just showed you is I have a collection of cotton. I have all of these skeins, all of these, and even more leftovers. So this one I feel a little bit differently about because there is a way for me to do this where like each one of these is a skein in my stash and like that kind of sort of makes sense. But then what about all of these ones that are little leftover bits? So for this particular one, because cotton is not something I use very often, it's something I use more for when I'm making float totes and other things. I feel like this all needs to be quantified together. So I'm kind of thinking for this one, I will semi-track by skeins because I do have at least 9, I think, fully intact skeins. So those might go in as just like sugar and cream, 9 skeins, the yardage and the grams and all of that. And it's not really a leftover, right? But then I have all of this stuff and the stuff in the Ziploc bag that I think I will just weigh all together, not track it as a skein or track it as 1 skein, and just the total number of grams for that. At the end of the day here, I'm just trying to have an idea of everything that I have in my stash and motivate myself to use it and see progress on it. So I think as long as I have the weight, then that makes the most sense. But I'm going to store these all together. Like I'm not going to have my leftovers of cotton separate from my full skeins in cotton because when I come to make a project, I will try to use the leftovers first. If not, I will dive into the full skeins, or depending on what I'm making, I might start with the full skeins and then like sub in accents with the leftovers. So they need to be stored all together. So they're kind of a different, category than other independent leftovers in my stash. Another category that I have is things like this, where I have teeny tiny leftovers, and this is what most of my leftovers actually are. They're like small little bits that weigh less than 100 grams, sometimes way less than 100 grams, but then they might also have things like this with them. So this is from a blanket that I made, and I needed to order more yarn because I was running out. Actually, it's a blanket that's back there on the couch. I used this to join it and to do the border. And I originally had, I don't remember, did I originally have 4? Maybe. And I realized I was going to need more than that, so I ordered 4 more or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But whatever happened, when I was finished with that project, this is what was left over. 2 little bits and 2 full skeins. So how do you go about tracking something like that? So with this one, I actually am going to think a little bit differently about it. So because it's fingering weight, and it is something that can be used for scrappy projects with all of my other fingering weight yarns. Wait, have I showed you those yet? Okay, I have 3 bins that look like this. So like clear acrylic bins. And this one has leftovers in it that are approximately 10 grams or less. The next one has larger leftovers and the next one has larger leftovers, but all fingering weight because these are the kinds of scraps that I can pull a bunch of little tiny things together and use them for something. So these two guys are going to go into this bin because they are truly leftovers. A little different than my cotton stash where I'd probably put these away together. I think it's fine to let those go to be true leftovers, scraps. I guess leftovers is a little different than scraps. And then these are actually going to go into stash and be ready to use for something else. So just like I was tracking all of my other skeins, this is gonna be 2 skeins, a fingering weight in this color. I can put it on that top shelf there, and I feel like that makes sense to me. There's one kind of final category of leftover that is going to be the most satisfying, I believe, and that is garments that are already complete that I don't need the rest of the yarn, and that yarn does not fit anywhere else into my stash. For example, this is the leftovers from my Salty Days sweater by Veronica Lindbergh. So in here, I made some repairs on that sweater. So I have the bottom hem that I cut off. So this I no longer need. It is not, to me, worth unpicking to use. I know other people might feel differently about that and would take the time to unpick that. I finished this sweater over a year ago, so this has been so out of sight, out of mind. And honestly, an argument for why I should be finishing things and then immediately using the leftovers. I probably would have been more motivated to pick through that, but I didn't. And so at this time, I'm going to let go of perfection and be okay with just tossing that and letting it go. I also have the swatch that I did. And then I have really small bits of the yarn that I used for this sweater. So this honestly could be used for something else. And actually, maybe I should do that. Maybe I should save the DK weight and the mohair separately into other stash quantities, because like it could potentially make a hat or something. But then I just get so exhausted thinking about, I've already made a sweater out of this yarn. I love it. It's beautiful. I don't really have need for making a hat out of this yarn. But then I go, well, I could make it and donate it. But then I'm like, I don't know, would somebody want a mohair hat? That's not going to be easy care. And then I just get overwhelmed by all the possibilities. And that's why it ends up sitting in a bag like this. So let's start with this. I want to start a system for garments that I still have to keep a little bit of the yarn in case I need to make repairs. So I've heard people do this different ways. I've heard people will keep their swatches because in the very worst case scenario, let's say I get a really bad snag that turns into a hole, I could undo this in order to repair my sweater. I love that idea because this would be really nice flat storage and I could just make a Ziploc bag with swatches or turn a little container in my yarn shelf into a swatch container and just toss them in there when I'm done. But also that sounds like an annoying amount of work to have to undo my swatch. So my other thought was I could just take both yarns, and since this sweater was 2 yarns held together, I could just hold them like this, and then I could just simply make, several yards little bundle of yarn as like a little emergency repair kit. It wouldn't be as much as the swatch, but it would also be handier to get to, like if I really needed it. I guess actually instead of hanging it like this, the better solution would be to put it into a little ball. I guess I'm still thinking through this one and trying to decide what the best thing is. So again, give me your thoughts on this. What do you think the best thing is to do for repairing? Also, I've never yet, knock on wood, had to actually take anything and repair it. But as soon as I get rid of something, I know that that is going to be a problem. All right, sort of scratch everything that I just said, because I've now sat here for a few moments and I just took a little bit of time to sort out the different leftovers that I had. And I have come to the conclusion that what I was trying to do before in making those categories was good. But the reason it was so difficult is that I was trying to do two things at once. My intention for this whole process is just to inventory, just to take in what I have and track it. And what I was trying to do with the leftovers is both inventory and make decisions on getting rid of or using stuff. And so I was overcomplicating it a whole lot. So what I just sat down and did is sorted into piles a few different things. So mostly I was like, let me separate out the swatches because that was really getting me stuck, right, on trying to figure out what yarns to keep. So I only have these two swatches. So there's my swatch system sort of getting started. I pulled out anything that was a single skein and I only found two things. This one is such a mess because I started a project, but I also have this. So I think since this is the only intact one, I'll keep it here. And I'm actually going to move this to my largest pile, which you can actually see the top of here. This is most of what was in my leftovers. I'm going to call this future potential projects. And exactly what we were talking about before with the blanket yarn, it has potential to be used into something in the future. And I think I was just trying really hard to like make decisions on those right now or somehow pretty them up so that they do actually get used. I think that's a big reason why leftovers get left alone in here, but I don't need to do that right now. I don't need to necessarily take out things that are full skeins versus not. I am just going to track them and I'm just going to take one bag at a time and I'm going to weigh it and I'm going to put it in my tracker in whatever way that makes sense. And I think I will keep things like this together. This is a full intact single skein along with two smaller portions of the same color. I want to keep these together because I can use them for something together, whether it becomes a tank top or a border to a blanket or paired with another fingering weight yarn. It makes a whole lot more sense for it to be in there. And maybe with these bagged up the way they are, I can try to make it a point to grab one of them every other month or so and make a decision on what to do with it. Try to slowly work through things in this way. So that feels a whole lot more reasonable and doable and better. And that's pretty much all of the leftover things. Something that has come up for me a lot as I've been thinking about my stash this week, even in the time in between where I wasn't physically going through it, but I was just thinking about my goals for this year and what I want to get done. A phrase that kept coming up for me was, I want to have less so that I can do more with it. And I think that applies so much to yarn, to my yarn stash and sort of my philosophy behind getting my stash lowered to a more reasonable place. And I'm sure that I heard that phrase somewhere in some kind of media somewhere, because there was a time period where I was consuming a lot of stuff about minimalism. And I'm sure that was in there, but it just kept popping up into my head this week. Like, that's exactly what I want to do. When I have less to manage, I use my things better. I do more with them. I'm able to actually take that leftover like a little baby bird and turn it into something beautiful. And that's really the whole point of all of this. So we're going to run some numbers up here, I think, on the side of my final stash counts, because my hope is that I can get all of these leftovers inventoried today, and then tomorrow I'm going to work on all the stuff from the 50 states, my other big point of contention, so that I have a real and true total of my stash before this video goes up and a starting place for 2026. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to check in every quarter and make another video where I kind of go through and talk about the way that I thought about working through my stash those last 3 months. So I'll see you again for this series in a couple months, but in between, I am going to be continuing my weekly podcast episode where I talk about projects. And so incorporating stash will of course come through in that. I also have some ideas this year for recording a few tutorials for scrappy projects, like little things that you can do. So I have a lot that's going to be including my stash journey this year, not just the quarterly videos. And I do think next week I'm going to have my 2026 project plans, which you bet will include a lot of stash use. So thank you so much for watching this video, for coming along on this messy journey with me. I will put the tracker down below if you would like to use it. And of course, you're able to make a copy and then you can modify that in any way that works for you. If you need any help with that tracker, send me an email. I'm always down to nerd out about yarn things and things that have to do with numbers. I'd love to work with you on that and help you out. So just reach out to me. Email's always the best place, and we can be on this stashing down journey together. Thank you so much for watching. Can you say thank you, Toaster? All right, maybe not. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.